as we get more fat adapted, we get less aches and pains, we get less fatigue. When we're fat adapted and we're utilizing fat as a more abundant and available energy source, we can do more intensity, we can do more volume, all of that stuff. And that comes from lower oxidative stress and inflammation. Your body doesn't need carbs, but your body does need glucose. For those in the ketogenic and carnivore community, you need to understand just being keto, just following a carnivore diet doesn't eliminate the requirement for glucose and glycogen in your body. The benefits from a sports performance perspective from being fat adapted is actually improving how your body uses glucose, how your body and when your body breaks down glycogen for energy.
And we're live. Bronson, how are you, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's been a long time. It's been has it been a couple of years since we talked?
I don't think it's been that. I mean, you were at, when was the last conference that we saw each other at?
Oh, geez.
Were you at Keto Hack Your Health last year?
No, it was not, because we were on the cruise.
That's right.
So it may have been the year before that.
Yeah, so it's been 2 years probably.
Yeah, it has been 2 years since we've seen each other. It's probably been longer since I've been on here.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Well, you got all kinds of things going on. Bring me up to speed on your world, man.
Oh my gosh. Just a few things going on. Let's see. Since we've talked, one, maybe two books have come out. So I had a book that came out in 2022, Ultimate Ketogenic Fitness, which we may have talked about on one of your episodes.
I remember that one coming out.
So since then, I published a book last year, Body Confident, which I'm really happy about. That book was really intended to be, I started writing that book for coaches to kind of help coaches have a framework to work with their clients on just understanding what are the basic things that we need to knock out before we get crazy and start tweaking and biohacking and all these other types of things, right? We get into all these mechanisms and scientific solutions for stuff, and we tend to forget what the basics are. So I started writing that for coaches, and then as I was going through it, it's like, you know what? I think everybody needs this. What are the basic things that we need to cover when we talk about fitness, nutrition, and mindset? And then how do we use that in a framework that no matter where we are, how long we've been doing whatever we're doing in our journey, or what we're stuck on, we have a place to go back to figure out what's next. Right? Because those are the things that matter. There's basic things in fitness, there's basic things in nutrition, and there's basic things in the way we think about our journey that we can always revisit to get things going again. And that's what I wrote that book for. That came out last year, Body Confident. Then since then, I've gotten my master's degree in exercise science and nutrition.
Nice.
And I've started a doctoral program for a Doctor of Health Science. So in the next few years, I'll be a doctor. You can call me Dr. Dant, Dr. Coach Bronson or something like that.
Dr.
I haven't figured out quite exactly what I'm doing there.
I like it. You can wear a lab coat.
So, and I'm working on another book. I've got a book that I'm working on, which honestly, we're going to be talking about some of the topics I'll be covering in the next book. It's going to be a very dense book, and I'm really writing it because as I get more into the science, my doctoral focus is going to be ketogenic sports performance. I'm focusing in on the exercise science aspect of how do we maintain or improve performance without destroying our health? Because that's one of the biggest things I see in athletes today. I have tons of clients I've worked with over the years. I have a client right now. He's in his 50s. He's been a runner, endurance athlete for 30 years, and his body is destroyed, absolutely destroyed. And a lot of it is overtraining, but a lot of it is diet. And when we hear stories about, like Professor Tim Noakes, who got into learning about the ketogenic diet because he was an endurance athlete who was pre-diabetic. And trying to figure out, like, wait a second, why do we have all these athletes who have problems? You look at Ronnie Coleman, destroyed his body. There's a lot of things going on in that specific, circumstance. It's not just diet related, obviously, but there's a huge aspect of lifestyle and nutrition that when we look at the impact of specific training for sports, especially at a high level, we forget how powerful nutrition can be in mitigating injuries, in reducing recovery time, in allowing for higher volumes and high intensities without injury and all of these other things, right? extending the amount of time you can work before you get into overreaching and overtraining. A lot of that stuff nutrition helps a big amount. And we talk about managing your training volume. We talk about managing your intensity. We talk about even getting more sleep. But nobody talks about how does nutrition affect all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a huge piece of what I want to look at.
It's a big hole, man. It's a sad story to see play out too, because I see it time and time again, especially in, bodybuilding. Like obviously in the enhanced side of things, you got people abusing performance enhancing drugs, and that's kind of, one foot in the grave to a lot of extent there. But like even in the natural bodybuilding space, I was just talking to Greg about this yesterday. It's like, I'm really excited to see what I look and feel and perform like when I'm 73 years old, and compare that to other natural bodybuilders that are still, prioritizing their sleep, prioritizing their training, like doing all the right things from a natural bodybuilding standpoint, not abusing the drugs, but not really focusing on the type of foods that I am. Like they're eating more of a, if it fits your macros approach, higher carb, stuff like that.
They won't make it that long.
Yeah. I'm looking at it. I'm like, man, I'm seeing this play out, and we're all young, quote unquote, now. So like we can get away with stuff. There's, it's hard to distinguish the lines, but I'm telling you, man, in 30 years, the way I eat relative to the way they eat, it's going to make a difference.
It won't even take 30 years. For many of them, it'll be the next 5 to 10. 40s, 50s, 60s, 40s and 50s is going to start, they're going to run into a wall and be like, what the hell happened? Because especially in bodybuilding, we're talking about traditional diets of low fat. We're talking about traditional diets of consistent carb ingestion, which is destroying their glycemic variability, right? You have glycation, you have all of the things that come with the ups and downs of glucose spikes all the time. You have metabolic dysfunction in the constant up and down of food intake. And there's just a whole bunch of things, not even talking about the PED aspect of it, but even in the natural space, there's such a dysfunction in how things are approached traditionally that nobody really has grasped, even though the data is out there. And that's one of the reasons I really am passionate about this, because the data exists. And the problem is people either refuse to acknowledge it, don't recognize it, or are purposely covering it up. And my goal in my career as a doctor, in my career in research, is to uncover and talk about all of these things that the data is already there. I'm working on 3 papers to publish right now, and all of them are if you can't see the data and what this data means, looking at the research that exists today, you're being ignorant on purpose.
So let me ask you this. A lot of people in the natural bodybuilding space, I'll speak to that because I'm familiar with it, but like a lot of them are in the, evidence-based crowd. Like you get the Layne Nortons out there, and I've had Layne on the podcast a few times, I think, but like he's all about the data, looking at the research studies, yet he's still an advocate for the flexible dieting approach and not really putting much emphasis on any specific macronutrient. Like there's a lot of people in that space. Sure. So if the data exists and they're trying to compile all this data, why do you think they've not changed?
Because the data exists in the context that people aren't willing to recognize because it loses them money.
How
so? Layne Norton's a great example. He's the first one who will argue and make esoteric and convoluted justifications for why he's looking at data a certain way and what it means. And he won't recognize some of the things that are very obviously in front of him. And we'll talk about some of that stuff today. There is, and there's also another aspect of this that to lay the groundwork for what we'll talk about. One of the misconceptions that I want to talk about in this list of things, because most of the stuff we'll talk about is misconceptions, misunderstandings, or things that are applied out of context. And the biggest one I think that we can talk about, I say biggest a lot, but I think this is the foundation where a lot of this misunderstanding comes from. And that is the zealotry of ketogenic practitioners, we'll call it enthusiasts, or carnivore enthusiasts, has sent the message and is understood by most people that we think, I'll say we because I'm in that group as well, that going keto is better than being a carb-fueled athlete. That you will perform better if you go keto, if you are fat adapted, and all of these other types of concepts and ideas. And this is the fact. This is what I'm seeing in the data. That is absolutely not the case at an acute level. So just being fat adapted won't make you a better athlete. All of the data for endurance athletes, for strength athletes, for CrossFit athletes, for ball sports athletes, all of the data shows that from a performance perspective in a short to moderate time frame, 6 to 12, 18, even 30 weeks, right? That the performance difference between the two nutrition protocols is pretty much the same. There is no significant better performance for fat adapted athletes over carb adapted athletes.
I mean, oftentimes the carb or the keto adapted athletes are showing a decrease in performance because some of those
initially,
like in 2-week spans.
Right. If you account for the adaptation period, there's always a dip and then it comes back, and over time it equals out essentially.
Yeah.
So that kind of is used by the carb zealots, let's call them the carb zealots, the carb camp, to say, well, there's no better performance, so why does it matter? What we're doing works. We've been doing it for 50 years. Why do I need to change anything? And that, I think, is where we've missed the opportunity as people in the space to say, well, here's some things that you probably haven't considered of why you should do that. And that has to do with the metabolic health aspect, right? The focus on social media and the focus on most sport science, exercise science, content influencers and doctors out there on the internet is two things. It's body composition or performance. Nobody is talking about sustainability of their sport, sustainability of competition, or long-term health after competition is over. Right? Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about, hey, my nutrition is going to be a major factor in my injury risk. It's going to be a major factor in my ability to recover. It's going to be a major factor in how long I can play this sport or do this activity before my body falls apart. Mm-hmm. And on the side, on the front side, and this is where we don't have the data. So I'm talking about all the stuff we do have data on. On the back side of things, we still don't have data. And I don't know if we will ever really have data outside of anecdotal, which there's a lot of anecdotal information here. And that is the benefits of keto, the benefits of being fat adapted come in the stabilization of health markers and metabolic performance that allows an increase in volume, an increase in intensity, a faster time of recovery that allows improved performance beyond current standards over time.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'm a huge advocate for playing the long game and sustainability. I mean, like that's what I've pretty much hung my hat on. I mean, I'm excited to keep doing this. I mean, I've been doing it for over a decade now, and I got no plans of deviating.
Yep.
But a lot of people, man, they're very short-sighted in their goals. They want to lose 20 pounds by next week. And it's like, you got to totally reframe how you think about your compounding actions day in, day out. What you put in your mouth, how you move your body. Like, you got to think in terms of what can you sustain from now until the day you die.
Exactly. And even outside of sport, that's a great way to put it, because it's also lifestyle. Even if you're not competitive, even if you just want to be active and fit and healthy the rest of your life, there's certain things that you can do to sustain your physical ability for longer. And nutrition is one of the top 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, honestly, like just simply from a recovery standpoint, man, like before I was eating keto, like I would get like that lactate burn, you'd be doing a set of bench press with dumbbells, and then you'd hit that burn, and then like you're just out. You get that lactate threshold, and it's all she wrote. I don't ever get that anymore. Like I cannot tell you the last time I felt that lactate sensation. We'll
talk
training.
about that. That's actually, for sure. That's on my list.
Yeah, let's just peel the curtain back, man. What order of attack do you want to?
So that's we talked about the first thing, right? So the first thing to understand that everybody should understand, and this could be a good thing or a feather in the cap for the carb camp, right? There's no better performance directly from being fat adapted. It's pretty much the same. Every study you look at, all the meta-analysis, all the different systemic critical reviews and systematic reviews, they all come out the same. The performance is about the same. On the flip side, we do know And this is extrapolation, and this is extrapolation from the mechanism paired with the correlation, right? The relationship between my 15 plus years coaching and the hundreds of people that I've seen who have had this response in my own experience, right? As we get more fat adapted, we get less aches and pains, we get less fatigue, we can do more intensity, we can do more volume, all of that stuff, right? And that comes, in my opinion, directly from lower oxidative stress and inflammation. When we're fat adapted and we're utilizing fat as a more abundant and available energy source, we don't have the same amount of oxidative stress and inflammation in our body that our body has to fight with and deal with. And it can go towards repair and function instead of sending everything off to go fight the fires. Right.
Yeah.
So that to me is the biggest impact in long-term sustainability. I don't have to worry about as much my risk of overtraining. I used to overtrain when I first went carnivore in 2018. I had overtrained myself to the point where if I did more than 2 days a week, I was instantly overtrained. Like I was done. Like I had to take a break. I couldn't do it. My body, the line of "you're doing too much" was easily stepped over. I was always basically in overreaching, just about to be overtraining. And within 90 days of going carnivore, I was able to get back to 4 or 5, 6 days a week and be good.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The overwork that I had done wasn't because of the work I was doing. It wasn't because of CrossFit. It wasn't because of my workouts. I wasn't overtraining because I was doing too much. I was overtraining because I was doing too much in the big picture of my overall load of stress, which mostly was coming from my nutrition.
Yeah.
So when I fixed my nutrition, that overall stress load just dropped. And my body was like, oh, I now have all these resources to work on repair and recovery. Guess what? Now you can work out more.
Yeah, it's all boils down to like partitioning of resources. And I feel like once you become deeply fat adapted, you're able to tap into a more robust fuel reserve, obviously, first and foremost. But then like the efficiency of your body to recover, to repair, to replete and build is enhanced exponentially.
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
To do the same thing requires less work
Bingo.
by the body on a cellular level. And I feel like that compounded over a lifetime is night and day from those consuming predominantly carbohydrates.
That is what it's all about. Yeah, absolutely. If you're an athlete now and you want to be an athlete indefinitely, then being fat adapted is where you should be. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I just did I think I wrote about my VO2 max test in an email and you responded to it.
That's what got me wanting to talk. Yeah. Cause we'll talk about VO2 max, and there's some stuff when we talk about VO2 max, lactate threshold, crossover point, fat oxidation, that really, and that's actually very specific to a paper I'm working on right now, where we're proposing some adjustments to how we measure all of those things. But yeah, that's definitely on the list. Because VO2 max, God, we could talk for an hour probably just on VO2 max and how inaccurate just that is, and how there's a lot more stuff going on.
Well, I'm not an expert at VO2 max. It's the first time I've ever done it. I mean, from a training standpoint, like I don't ever train based off of heart rate. Right. I've taken an interest in it now post VO2 max, but sure. I mean, like when I got that scan done, man, it was crazy because he had never seen that crossover point like he had seen on my graph illustrated.
What was yours at?
My VO2 max, I think, was like 55 or something. I don't do any cardio work, man. So 55 for that. And which I think pegged me at like top 5% in people in my age group.
That's not bad that's good for age group for someone who doesn't do any cardio.
Yeah, for someone who doesn't do any cardio. I've actually been doing more lately, so I'd be keen to get it retested. Yeah. But what's cool for me is he had a graph. I'm not sure if this is standard with VO2 max test, but like it showed, at what heart rate you're at and how much of that is coming from, carbohydrate utilization versus switching over to fat metabolism.
Yep.
And a textbook graph for everybody that he's seen is typically a little bit more fat than carbs in the beginning, but then that starts to dip pretty early on. And then it just becomes predominantly, if not 100% exclusively, carbohydrate metabolism. Yeah. Whereas my graph was exclusively fat metabolism throughout the 3/4 of the testing duration.
Yeah. Do you know what percentage your crossover point was? 75, 80, 85?
I don't remember, man. I mean, my
Okay.
glucose metabolism did not exceed my fat metabolism until I was like at heart rate 165 or something like that.
Okay,
Like it
that's
was
pretty.
way
Yeah.
towards the very end.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's again, that's another example of the data that exists. That's exactly what I would expect for
Yeah,
someone
it's
who's
pretty
fat
cool.
adapted.
I wish I had done one, when I first started doing keto. So, because I've always been an advocate that your level of fat metabolism improves with the duration of you following the diet. And like,
Mhm.
obviously, we know that to some extent, like there's a lot of controversy as to what that length of time is. You're registering ketones in 24 to 48 hours. You're 0.5 or millimolar or higher soon after that. And then, from an athletic performance standpoint, I've always told people 6 months kind of minimum. But I've always believed that having been strict keto now for over a decade, like that just continues to improve. So I'd be curious to see what my results would have been, year 1 versus year 11.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest factor. There's a period of time, and I don't know what that time is, where your system is going to be as efficient as it's going to be just from a nutrition intake quality and structure, right? Based on your diet is going to
Mm-hmm.
be. It's the combination of the nutrition and the activity. So for you, you've been fat adapted for 10 years. If you wanted to improve specific markers, then you would have to add different activity, right? Because
Right.
VO2 max, RER, crossover point, those are more endurance type things that we track at the endurance level. So if you wanted to improve your VO2 max, start running more. If you wanted to improve your RER, doing those activities where those things are going to be. Now, your RER, which is the respiratory equivalent ratio, is what we measure when we say how much fat versus how much glucose or carbohydrate are you burning. It's technically not carbohydrate. That's something else that bugs me because we don't burn carbohydrates. Let me talk about that real quick because I don't want to confuse anybody. One of the things that really drives me crazy in sports science is the frequency with which people harp on specificity when they say things or in their arguments against a certain thing, but then don't use that same specificity in their own argument for their thing, right? So when we talk about fuel utilization, substrates for energy, this is one of the reasons why I don't use calories, and I can't. Calories just annoy me because there's no such thing. They don't exist and our body can't use them. So we should stop talking about them. This is another reason why I'm very clear. I want to be very clear. Your body does not burn carbs. Carbs are a source of material that your body can convert into glucose, fat, or glycogen in your body and then utilize those substrates to make ATP. So the only place your body uses carbs is when you put it in your mouth and then it does something with it. From that point on, it is glucose, it is glycogen, it is some type of fat. So when we say you're a carb burner, nobody's actually a carb burner. We're utilizing glucose, we're utilizing glycogen, and we have to be specific because when we talk about what our body does for energy, what our body is doing with the food that we're eating, it's doing a lot of different things and it's doing a lot more than just burning energy or just burning things to make energy. So that is a very specific thing that I want to make clear as we talk about other, we go through here. Your body doesn't need carbs, but your body does need glucose. Right? We hear it all the time. Your brain doesn't need carbs. Yeah, it absolutely does need glucose. Even if you have ketones supplying 70% of the energy in your brain, you still need that 30% to be glucose. So when we say that carbs aren't preferred, you're absolutely right. Carbs aren't preferred. And carbs are also not preferred because our body doesn't actually use carbs. Our body uses glucose. Our body breaks down glycogen. Our body breaks down triglycerides from adipose tissue and breaks down fatty acids. So being clear, on one end, we don't need carbs. We do need glucose. So your body can make glucose. I don't need to eat carbs. That's the distinction.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, for those in the ketogenic and carnivore community, you need to understand just being keto, just following a carnivore diet doesn't eliminate the requirement for glucose and glycogen in your body. You still need them. Your brain still needs them. Your red blood cells need them. Your muscles still need them. You're not replacing glucose with fat. You're changing the priority. You're changing the availability. You're changing the timing of when they're accessed and how they're used. You're changing the management system of how they are utilized and produced and function, but you're not removing the requirement for glucose.
Yeah. I mean, this is why people can be fat adapted for years and still have, 70 to 80 to 90 milligrams per deciliter when they take a glucometer test, because your body's going to fight to maintain certain regulated blood serum glucose levels.
Absolutely. So there's something I hear, and I shiver when I see that. People talk about, oh, you don't need carbs. You're right. You don't need carbs, but we still need glucose. And we still need to understand that the benefits from a sports performance perspective from being fat adapted is actually improving how your body uses glucose, how your body and when your body breaks down glycogen for energy. So I saw a post the other day, or somebody asked a question on one of my posts, and it got me thinking. And I realized, bodybuilders, when they cut, traditional carb bodybuilders, this was the question. I was posting about glycogen stores. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the idea of glycogen stores is a myth. There's no such, not glycogen stores, but depletion of glycogen stores for exercise. There is no strength training workout that you're going to do, not counting PEDs, not counting any of the other things that may happen as on that side of things. But as a natural person, as a sport enthusiast, as a bodybuilding enthusiast, there is no strength training, resistance training routine or session that you're going to do where you're going to deplete your glycogen stores enough to impact your workout. Not going to happen. What is going to happen, especially if you are carb centric in your diet, is you will use up the available glucose that's in your bloodstream and not be efficient at accessing the stored glycogen that you have in your muscles because you have not made that system efficient, because you're always pumping glucose into your bloodstream. Right? So what happens is, I'm going to cut, all my lifts suck. I need to take pre-workout. I need to do this. I need carbs before my session because I'm on a cut. I'm in a deficit, so I have no energy. You have no energy because you're not metabolically flexible. It has nothing to do with glycogen storage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So understanding, and this is what hit me, is like a bodybuilder on a cut is basically going through keto adaptation.
In an incredibly inefficient manner.
Because they keep shoving carbs back in, right?
Yeah.
But that's what they're doing. When they're in a deficit and they're eating less energy, they are essentially telling their body, hey, I need to burn more body fat. So they're doing the same thing as keto, but they're keep shoving carbs in and messing up the process, which is why they have so much problem doing it.
And they'll oftentimes keep carbs low, but then they'll have protein incredibly elevated and very, very minimal dietary fat. And if their body's not efficient at tapping into stored fat reserves, then they're basically creating glucose through gluconeogenesis, which is an inefficient process and not a great substrate for energy, which is why they all feel like zombies that last.
Yeah, it's really even just the little amount of carbs that they're throwing in, that is what's messing most of it up, because just having that extra glucose in the bloodstream, it has to do something with it. So it's going to use it, which if it's using that, it's not pulling from glycogen stores. And if there's too much, then it's making it into body fat, and then they're defeating the whole purpose anyways. So yeah, it's just a whole cycle of, wait a second, what are we really doing? Have we thought this through? And no, because it works, and it's become a suck fest, embrace the suck. And that's what it takes to get through it. But Greg knows, Natalie knows, I know, it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We cut.
It's night and day, man. It's night and day.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, we go through. I'm cutting right now. I've dropped 4% body fat in the last 6 weeks. Right? I just ate a pound before we got on this call. I just ate a pound of ground beef and 6 eggs. I'm not having any problem feeling hungry. I just came back from the gym. I had one of the best workouts I've had in a month. Right? No problems. On a cut, having a blast. And it doesn't have to be a suck fest.
Yeah. I mean, you can still be hungry when you're super depleted, and you still be hungry. But like the psychological aspect of it where you're just in zombie mode and delirious, like that doesn't happen when you go about it in your fat adaptation, going into the deficit. I mean,
and unless you're really, really low and you're like when you're a couple days before your show or you're getting really low, it doesn't even mess with your workouts as much.
Yeah.
Like you can still go crank out a workout and be fine. Like it's not. Yeah. So understanding that the reason traditional bodybuilders have a hard time with energy and all these other things when they're cutting, it's because they're not actually, their body is trying to go through fat adaptation and improve metabolic flexibility, but they're not actually letting it because they keep putting carbs back in. They're inefficient at accessing muscle glycogen, and they literally, all the energy's there, they just can't get to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also one of the reasons why athletes don't like doing keto studies. And it's hard to get athletes to say, yes, I'll agree to 12 weeks or 16 or 18 weeks of doing a new diet, because they feel like crap for the first 4 to 8 weeks and nobody wants to go through that. So there's that.
So in regards to the muscle glycogen, like traditional athletes will, talk about how flat they're looking and they just don't have that fullness that they do when they bring in carbs. If they're not really ever depleting muscle glycogen to begin with, what accounts for that?
That's still water. It's just water. Is that what you're talking about? I mean, the minute you cut carbs, you're dropping water and you're going to lose size.
Yeah. I mean, when I do it, like I'm manipulating electrolytes to capitalize on bringing any fluid in my subcutaneous layer skin into my muscle tissue to provide that voluminous look. But yeah, I mean, I don't use carbs to fill out from a muscle glycogen standpoint when I'm in a prep, and it hadn't hindered me at all.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's just, and this is something I have not spent any time doing research on. It's on my list of potential things a rabbit hole I may want to go into one of these days. But at a surface level of me looking at just general information, I've always had in the back of my mind this idea that, because let's give you an example. I've been around bodybuilding for a long time. I've been in some long-term relationship. It's interesting now that I'm thinking about this. Most of my long-term relationships have been bodybuilders. I think I have a type. The changes that I see in bodybuilders at all different levels over years is so minimal in the size, the shape, the whatever. The difference is usually conditioning. And when you see someone, natural or not, and they show their pictures, or you see the side by side, what did they look like yet last year or the year before that, or when they first came into the game, and all these things, right? Most of it is definition. Most of it is some shaping and some proportional things, but overall size isn't really that different. And I hear bodybuilders say all the time, I always gain more if I have carbs. But then you cut and you lose 80% of it.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we just said, screw the whole cutting, bulking cycle, and we just said, let's find a homeostatic balance between intake that allows me to maintain my body fat and build muscle over time. Then I can actually see what's muscle, not what is inflammation, not what is coming from water retention, not what all of these things that have nothing to do with the actual muscle. And then when I cut, I'm not actually losing all of that muscle. I just refine the fuel intake and cut my fat a little bit.
Yeah,
because I see all these people, I gained 30 pounds in the off season. Well, yeah, then you lost 35 to get shredded again. And there was no muscle gain at the end of that.
There's no benefit to having a sloppy bulk because then you just have to diet longer and more aggressively to take it off. And then you're going to wind up losing more lean tissue, especially if traditional, carbohydrate based approach. And like when I look at my show weights, like my stage day weights year after year, I mean, there's not a massive increase in tissue. I mean, oftentimes I'll be lighter in later shows than I was earlier. I've gotten leaner, but I'm not putting on like 20 pounds of skeletal muscle tissue between competitions. Like that's just not happening, not naturally. And I do think there is tremendous benefit to having a dedicated building and cutting phase, because from a metabolic standpoint, having periods of time at a surplus and deficit is advantageous. But most people take it far, far too out of the range and realm of whatever's healthy by any means.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was actually just having this conversation with Natalie a couple of days ago. I'm not sure I am on board with the metabolic adaptation and need to change. And here's why. The way I understand it, the way I was always taught it, and the way that I've seen it put in practice is it's based on an energy management concept. Metabolic rate goes up, metabolic rate goes down. You don't burn, you do burn. If you get to a certain, you lose weight, your metabolic rate goes down. You gain weight, your metabolic rate goes up. All these different things. What I've noticed is a couple things that made me kind of second guess this whole idea. Two things. One, when I started using in-body scanners at my gym in 2016, 2017, I started noticing people losing weight overall, but gaining lean mass and their BMR going up. So over time, and initially their BMR may have gone down, but then the longer they're in the gym, the more muscle they build. They're 30 pounds lighter than they started, but their BMR is 5, 10, 15, 20 points higher than when they started, just because they built muscle. Mm-hmm. So the idea of metabolic rate kind of makes me go, that doesn't make sense. What about functional efficiency? What is it metabolic? Because here's the core root of it. Our metabolism isn't anything. I don't want to say anything. Our metabolism isn't only about how we burn fuel and how we make energy. Our metabolism is about all of the aspects of every system and process in our body that's keeping us alive. Mm-hmm. Our immune function, our digestion, our cardiovascular function, our central nervous system, our brain function, muscle protein synthesis, lymphatic function, everything that you can possibly think of, growing hairs, growing nails, our eyesight, all of it is part of our metabolism. So if we boil down all of that function to a simple, how well do we burn gas, then we're ignoring, do we have engine in the car? Are tires bald? Do we have brake pads at work? Is our windshield broken? Is our hood flying off? All of these other aspects that we're completely ignoring. So when we talk about metabolic rate, we're boiling down all of those systems and how well those systems are functioning to what's my miles per gallon, and that just doesn't make sense to me. So that's one aspect of that whole bulking and cutting for metabolic adaptation that I don't know if I buy into.
Yeah, metabolism's tricky, man. Like there's so many things involved in it, as you just described, and it's like there's all these basal metabolic rate calculations, and they can provide a rough estimate or average based off the general population, statistics that they have at hand. But like, yeah, I mean, the more muscle you have, obviously, the more fuel requirements your body has, everything else equal. But
is it fuel though?
Is it fuel?
Is it fuel though? Or is it metabolic function? Because muscle does more than burn fuel. Right? Muscle is a hormone signaler. Right? Muscle, there's a lot of other things that go on because of muscle or in the support of muscle that has nothing to do with energy.
Totally agree.
Right.
Like muscle's great. But if you have like all else equal, me, 50 pounds more muscle than current me would require more fuel coming in to sustain that increase of 50 pounds of skeletal muscle tissue.
So let's talk about the difference. And here's another word Nazi aspect of Coach Bronson. Let's talk about fuel versus nutrition.
Okay.
So do we need fuel to run our bodies, or do we need nutrition? Because it's a very different conversation. You need nutrition. The more muscle you have, the more protein you need, not the more fat you need necessarily, right? If you have plenty of fat on your body, if you're 10% body fat, you have plenty of fat in your body. You don't need to eat more fat just because you have more muscle.
Fat
right?
is where
but
I'm getting.
You do need more amino acids to support that muscle. And that's not because of fuel. That's because of maintenance of the system. That's the mechanical aspect.
True. The fat in this scenario is what is providing the energy to create the stimulus required to maintain and keep that lean tissue. So it's all hand in hand, kind of, so to speak.
So yeah, so that's the amino acids themselves, really. So fat itself doesn't really do much, right? So we have intramuscular triglycerides, we have intramuscular glycogen. They're there. Our body's going to do whatever it can to keep that there. Just because you have more muscle, yes, will you have more muscular fuel substrates? Absolutely. But your nutrition and what you need to maintain that muscle is much more dependent on your amino acid intake, right? Think about it this way. If you're at whatever lean mass you are now, let's say, use for me, for instance, I got about 94 pounds of skeletal muscle mass. In order for me to maintain my 94 pounds of skeletal muscle mass, if I stop eating protein, I will lose it. If I stop eating fat, I won't lose it.
Not immediately, but you will lose it.
Not if I'm at 15% body fat right now, right?
So
if there is no other fuel available, if I get to 4% body fat, then yeah, absolutely. My body's going to start breaking it down because it needs energy substrates. I'm not saying that there isn't a need for energy. What I'm saying is when it comes to maintaining muscle mass, amino acids are much more important for maintaining metabolic function than any energy substrate.
I agree with that. In the context of a deficit, we'll use bodybuilders as an example because we've been picking on them. So one of the best ways to hedge against catabolism in the context of a deficit, as bodybuilders are throughout a prep, is to keep that muscle in demand. And you might have your amino acids in check, but if you've got no energy, you're not going to be able to train at the rate needed to provide the stimulus to keep that muscle in demand. And if you're in the context of a deficit, if you're not able to stimulate it adequately, you'll lose it.
In a carb, you're talking about a carb-fueled, carb-centric diet?
Either way. I mean, if you don't have, from a training standpoint, how can I put this like an analogy? Just like if you've got an athlete dieting down for prep and they're in a caloric deficit, they're at a leaner body fat, and they're depleted, and they just stop training, they're going to have a pretty significant decrease in skeletal muscle tissue in the context of that deficit. And I've seen that.
Well, that doesn't matter if you're in deficit or not. If you stop training, you're going to lose muscle.
Right. But it's amplified in the context of a deficit. Like when you look at bodybuilders that are, changing their training drastically, not lifting with as much intensity, not requiring as much of the muscle, they lose muscle at a much higher rate than those that are pushing the envelope, not necessarily hitting PRs, but trying to maintain workload. And it's harder to do because you are depleted. But the best way to hedge against losing muscle in that context is to keep it in demand.
Well, that's all. Yeah, I mean, that's a general rule, right? There's three things you need for muscle, and that is stimulus, protein, and recovery. So you take any one of those away, and you're probably going to start losing muscle. Absolutely.
But if I didn't have enough fat coming in to fuel that training, then I wouldn't be able to provide that stimulus adequately, and I would lose that muscle. So that all kind of goes hand in hand.
So, okay. So that is so I think we're talking about two different things. I think you're talking about an activity requirement, not a biological requirement.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that for sure. If you're trying to cut, and that's another reason, okay, this is actually another reason why I'm not a fan, or I'm not sure I buy 100% into the cutting, bulking, or the metabolic adaptation adjustments, right? So the way I look at it, I look at things very system level. And at a system level, our body's desire, I shouldn't say desire because we don't have a desire, our body's internal programming is designed to maintain balance and to keep systems operating optimally as much as possible to keep us alive. So it doesn't make sense to me that if I have enough energy on my body, right, and we're working within the parameters of energy availability and access, assuming that those things are adequate. We're not talking about super obese. We're not talking about 4% body fat and your body can barely access anything for energy. You have to eat fat, different, just that general extreme, general population. If I am cutting or in a deficit, right, where I've reduced my fuel macros, I've reduced my fat or carbs to a certain point where I've started to lose body fat, there is nothing biologically that I've been able to find that says that is a problem indefinitely. Because I've set a homeostatic balance, there is no point at which energy substrates are not available. I'm not stressing my body in a way that is making the system inefficient. In many ways, I'm actually making the ability to access energy more efficient by stimulating it. So where do I need to then say, well, I need to now eat more because I've been in a deficit for so long, my metabolism has adapted to it?
I feel like a lot of this comes into the sustainability component. I mean, what you're describing now is like why a lot of people talk about protein sparing modified fast, where they'll have very high protein, very minimal dietary fat, no carbohydrates, obviously. Yep. And it works from a biological standpoint, but then they just feel like dog shit and they can't sustain.
Bingo. Dude, this is literally the same conversation Nat and I had. And it came down to, I don't think there is a biological reason. There's none that I can find that says it's better for your body to cycle in and out of a deficit or a surplus. Can't find any reason biologically for that. That makes sense to me. Maybe someone can explain it to me in a different way. But if we're talking about function, not just energy, talking about energy, yeah, you can make the case all day long. But if you're talking about actual metabolic function and the systems of how our body works, I can't find anything that makes sense. If you throw in individual preference and sustainability, then we have a whole different story. And it makes a lot of sense from that perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do feel like there's, like I don't, I guess I'm in my throat. I don't just work with competitive athletes in the extreme. I like the extremes.
Sure.
But like a lot of people will come to me and you probably had clients like this fit the description perfectly as well. But like, 40-year-old women that have been just jumping from one diet to the next their entire life. And then they've been, in a deficit for the last 20 years. And their body becomes seemingly unresponsive. And you got to ask yourself, okay, have they actually adhered to what they're saying? What's their track record? What are they doing metabolically speaking in that context? I've oftentimes, like if I'm putting their word at face value and they've been eating as little as they've supposedly been eating, and then I go through a period with a strategic increase in food for ample time to then transition into a deficit, their body does seem to become much more responsive.
Absolutely.
So I would argue there's some metabolic adaptations taking place there.
So yeah, and this is, again, the nuance in the wording, it makes all the difference, right? That is not the same. What you described is inadequate nutrition causing inefficient metabolic function. That is not the same, although practically it's the same. The wording is not the same as increasing or decreasing metabolic rate.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the energy. They have literally starved their systems, so their systems can't work. It's like you hire a bunch of people to build a house, but you never deliver the wood. So not much is going to happen. The minute you give it the wood and you send in the tools and you bring in the cement and you do the electrical, and you give them all the things that they need to build the house, things start happening, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about. The function of the system start doing what they're supposed to do. And then the things that are supposed to happen as far as improving body composition, utilizing body fat, creating the enzymes to break down all the different foods that we eat, improving our digestion, improving our immune function, all those things start happening because now they're getting adequate nutrition. So it's one of those nuanced, really kind of picky word Nazi things that I have, because I'm trying to be as specific as possible, because they're where I'm going in the scientific space. The details of that kind of thing make a difference.
Yeah.
And when we munge these concepts together using words that don't actually apply, and for most people listening, that you all probably don't care about this level of detail, but this is where I'm kind of focused right now, because when we say metabolic rate, it brings the concept of I'm burning more energy, and that's not it. What we're talking about is my body functioning the way it's supposed to function? And that's more important than is it burning energy? Because we can manage energy in and out all day long. We've been doing it for 50 years. And where are we? Right? Calories in, calories out. We move more, eat less has been the mantra for 60 years. And we're the fattest and sickest we've ever been. So obviously there's something else going on. So if we can start changing the mindset and the way we picture metabolism, some of this stuff, I hope, will change a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like, my biggest frustration with any of these spaces is that there's just this gross oversimplification of things and messages that are meant to apply to the masses, and there's no context dependent. Like when I'm trying to exhibit something or make a point or illustrate, it's like, look, first and foremost, let's give your body the nutrient dense requirements that it's been asked for.
Yep.
And once we have established that baseline, then it's much easier to tease out, okay, how much of that should you be eating? How little of that should you be eating? But like, until we've checked that first primary box, then you're really just shooting in the dark.
Yeah. And then there's also the bioavailability. So you can shove all the nutrients in, but are you actually utilizing it? Yeah. Right. And that's another aspect of why I don't like calories, because calories don't account for any of those things. They don't account for nutrients. It doesn't account for, maybe you metabolize protein better than I do. So regardless of what percentage it is, am I using it? Can I get it? Is my body able to do anything with what I'm eating? Those are all things that should be asked in this process of nutrition.
Yeah. I'm not against calories by any means. Like, I feel like that's been demonized a lot too. But again, like, speaking in terms of calories from someone that's like not fat adapted, not metabolically flexible, not healthy, I mean, you can't throw the same numbers from a caloric requirement standpoint to someone that is. So, like, again, you got to be making sure it's apples to apples here.
Do you want me to go in on calories, or do you want to skip that?
Man, I got no shame.
So this is going to get some people fired up. There is no caloric requirement for the human body because calories don't exist.
Well, calories are just a simple unit of measurement. Like, I think of calories like I would think of a tape measure, and you get incremental, centimeters and dollars. Like, it's not good or bad, and depending on what you're cutting, you might need a different measurement. Like, it's not like.
Well, here's the thing: we have that measurement, and it's a lot better than calories. Macros.
What is that? Yeah, I mean, macros to me is what, like, when I'm adjusting you've worked with me, like you have hired me, Natalie's worked with me. Like, when I'm giving macro recommendations, I'm focusing on the macros.
Exactly.
You calculate the calories as a result of those macros, but I'm fixated on the macros.
Exactly. So that's the same thing I do. I just gave up on the calories. I stopped using calories 5 years ago because they don't mean anything, right? Calories are the miles per gallon to checking your car's performance. If I go to the shop and I say, hey, how's my car performing? And he says, well, you're getting about 30 miles to the gallon. Okay, great. Now what?
Yeah.
That doesn't tell me anything. Am I burning oil? Have I lost transmission fluid? What's this clanking I hear every time I shift gears? There's a lot of other things going on, and calories don't tell us anything that has to do with anything. Here's a challenge for you or anybody, any of your listeners. Explain to me how your nutrition is going to improve your muscle mass, improve your immune function, help heal your gut, improve brain function, help heal autoimmune issues, reduce your insulin or improve your insulin sensitivity, reduce your hypertension, on and on and on and on and on, and say it without mentioning protein, carbs, fat, or electrolytes?
Be pretty tricky.
You can't do it. Calories can't do any of that.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
so
I'm
why do
totally
we
in
keep
agreement
using
with
calories? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you in that all of the fixation needs to be on the details, the nutrient density, the macro distribution, all of that stuff.
Yep,
Complete
absolutely.
agreement.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that, I eat the same thing, whether I'm in a building phase or a cutting phase, whether I'm 15% body fat or sub 3% body fat
Same
or
here.
sub 4% body fat.
Yep.
I don't change the food types that I'm eating. I'll change the amounts that I'm consuming.
Absolutely.
So in that context, I can illustrate that via a caloric load. So it's just a simple way to notate it, basically. But the
correct,
foods,
and it is again. But this is a perfect example of the oversimplification that sets people in the wrong direction. So calories were used in the mechanical engineering, right? I think it was trains. When they built trains, they were using calories to determine heat that came from the engines or something like that, and it was converted into the nutritional side of things, human nutrition in the 1800s. That's the only thing we had to estimate anything about metabolic function in the 1800s. Everybody can look at their phone and type in the food that they eat and get the actual macronutrients and even micronutrients of the food that they're eating.
Mm-hmm.
They can say, I'm getting 100 grams of fat every day on average. If I want to reduce my body fat, I can change that number from 100 to 90 and see what happens. Because it's the actual macro that's providing the substrate. There's nothing about anything in fat that your body recognizes calories for.
Yeah. So
right. So it's the macro. That's what I'm saying. We have macros. It's a much better way to track your intake and to gauge what's going on than calories ever have been or ever will be.
100% agree. 100%. That's why I have a big frustration with like the whole calorie counting in a vacuum concept. Like no attention paid whatsoever to the macros that comprise those calories, just total caloric load.
Right. IFYM and that kind of stuff. And thinking about, calories themselves, they don't account for nutrient density or bioavailability. There's no biological system. If you talk, the calories are focused on energy production and utilization, right? So if we look at, okay, what are the systems in our body that produce or utilize energy? Gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, fatty acid oxidation, Cori cycle, ketolysis, all of these systems that our body uses to make substrates or create ATP. None of them have anything. There's calories aren't on any of those flowcharts.
Yeah.
Right. So if it's not in our biology and it doesn't apply to the food, actually what our body does with the food, then what's the actual applicability of calories to our health? And the answer is zero.
Yeah.
So
no, I totally agree with you in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the basic premise is tough.
I just stopped using them. It just made no sense. Confused. Well, because here's the thing. Most people freak out when they work with me because they're used to using calories, and I give them their macros, their starting macros, in many times, not every time, many times. It's like, they're like, but there's no calories here. I'm like, yeah, that's because we managed your fat intake and we doubled your protein because you've been eating 50 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
Right. And there's less calories in protein than there is fat. And you were eating 400 grams of fat before, right? And now you're only eating 150. Like they look at the calorie and it totally freaks them out. I'm like, guys, it's not about the calories. What are you actually putting in your mouth?
Yeah.
And we have to retrain that whole thought process.
I would be totally in favor. Like I've used the term calories just as a simple data metric.
Sure.
I don't think it's bad in that context. I mean, just kind of like the scale weight. Like I'll look at my scale weight as a simple data metric, but like the composition of your body on that scale is what matters.
What's absolutely same thing. Yep.
Yeah. So like I would be totally in favor of if everybody simply focused on the fats, proteins, and carbs.
Oh my God. It would make things so much easier.
I mean, you could obviously get the calorie count from that.
Yes.
But like if everybody just focused on the macrogram goals.
Yes.
As opposed to the total caloric load.
Right on board.
I'd be 100% in favor of that.
Yep. And that's what I do. And that's what I tell people they should focus on. What are the actual macros? Because here's the thing. Every calorie calculator you go to what's it going to give you? Macros.
Yeah.
At the end, it gives you the macros. So why not just start with the macros, and whatever your calories end up, okay, that's what your calories are. It's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
Right. Just the same with body weight. Set a body fat percentage goal, set a skeletal muscle mass goal, set a lean mass goal, something that has to do with actually how your body's made up and functions. And then whatever your weight ends up being is whatever your weight ends up being.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I kind of going back to the overgeneralization thing. A lot of people in the carnivore space are like, calories don't matter. And I get where they're coming from,
Sure.
but I can assure you that if I eat the same foods in the building phase as the cutting phase, and I triple that intake as I've done, I'll gain body fat. And
absolutely. And this is, again, where be specific with what you're saying matters. Calories do not matter. Intake of fuel macros absolutely matters.
Yeah.
Fat and carbs are a lever to help manage body fat, and protein is a lever to help manage lean mass.
Yeah.
And they are independent. You do not have to connect the two of them. That's another aspect of calories that really drives me crazy, is people using ratios, right? If you're basing your nutrition off of a ratio, then it's very likely that you are, by definition, under consuming a macro or over consuming another macro.
What do you mean by ratio? Like the standard?
The 70-30, 60-40, whatever else, right? Much like we just talked about with macros and body weight. Whatever your ratio ends up being when you're at where you are is whatever your ratio ends up being. I don't even know what my ratio is right now. I'm doing about 220 grams of protein and 120 grams of fat a day. So whatever that ratio is whatever that ratio is.
Yeah, and it's totally fine for that ratio to change depending on what phase you're in. Like when I'm 100%. Working with clients, like you're familiar with my protocol. I'll start them with a higher fat, find their protein threshold. All the while, their macro distribution, quote unquote, ratio is changing.
Absolutely.
And each phase, you're going to optimize performance based off a different ratio. But
it's not the ratio that's determining your intake.
Right.
Your intake is just ending up at whatever ratio it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where I think people get mixed up, is they're like, well, I got to be 70-30. So if I up my fat, then I have to drop my protein. I'm like, no, guys, once you set your protein, I almost never drop it. Most people will get a protein set, and that is the lowest it will ever go as long as you're working with me. We may up it, but we rarely drop protein. But fat and carbs, they go up and down like crazy all the time, based on where you're at and what you're trying to do, for sure.
Yeah, it's all about the vocabulary, for sure, man. People get out in the weeds and they're speaking
very much.
Yes.
Let's talk real quick about your VO2 and some of the markers. So your VO2 was pretty good for someone that doesn't do cardio. I would guess that your crossover point, so for normal, traditionally fueled athletes, the crossover point is usually somewhere between 60 and 70% of VO2 max.
Mm-hmm.
What we see in fat adapted athletes is between 80 and 90. So and this is consistent. This has been going back to their faster study in 2016. We see this, and even before some other things there. But that's where it was first like, wait a second. Fat oxidation skyrocketed to the highest levels we've ever seen. And then we start doing more and more studies since then, and we're seeing consistently. In fact, there was a meta-analysis published last year specifically on the crossover point, where they pulled a bunch of different studies together and said, hey, look, this is consistent. Fat adapted athletes can perform high intensity effort with fat being the primary source of fuel.
100%.
Right. And you can't deny that this is one of the examples of the data exists. It's there. Right. So we define high intensity usually around 70% and higher.
Yeah. And again,
VO2
I'm not a VO2 max expert by any means, but just looking at my data, I mean, I was exclusively using fat until I was at like heart rate 120, 130, if I remember correctly. If you think about the activities and the performance you're doing, like when you're weight training, you're not really going beyond that heart rate. unless you're doing like some crazy HIIT style CrossFit or something.
Yeah.
So like I've got such a larger fuel reserve to tap into if I'm exclusively using fat and not exceeding that heart rate. So it's like, why would I not want to capitalize on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the type of effort is different, right? The muscle contractions that are done in running are very different than the muscle contractions in resistance training. So even, your heart rate may be higher because you're doing 15, 20 reps of something in the gym, but the muscle activation is a little bit higher. So your RER would actually probably be a little bit higher. You still have more glycogen and glucose being utilized, but it's still not going to be the same because you're going to be accessing intramuscular triglycerides for some of that energy. And it's going to be a higher percentage of fat utilization. That's just what happens. You're telling your body to get better at burning body fat. Mm-hmm. So that includes fat that's in your muscle. A lot of people don't realize that your muscle has fat just like your muscle has glycogen. Mm-hmm. That is a source of fuel. So the crossover point in fat adapted athletes happens in the high intensity window. So we can do high intensity effort, 800 meter sprints. We can do CrossFit exercises. We can do ball sports and still maintain a high amount of fat oxidation while we're doing it. And here's why that's a good thing. Because it saves our glycogen stores for when we really need it. If I can use fat for longer, I don't have to tap into my glycogen stores. So number one, the idea that I'm going to use up all my glycogen is ridiculous because this actually preserves glycogen. Number two, because I'm preserving glycogen and I'm not going into as much anaerobic work, I'm not creating as much lactate. So what else do we see? We often see that lactate threshold is increased at higher intensities or shifts to higher intensities in fat adapted athletes.
And the same monocarboxylic transporters that shuttle pyruvate and lactate are upregulated to shuttle the increased ketone bodies.
Yes.
So your ability to clear that lactate and pyruvate also is amplified. So it's like, it's just way more efficient. I mean,
it's just more efficient overall. And the ketones, this is still very new. There are some ketone companies that have put studies out that say that their ketones do this awesome, amazing stuff for performance. The studies I looked at, I haven't seen it. There are some studies that are coming, hopefully, that do some ketone stuff to kind of compare ketone and carb supplementation in performance to see if there's a difference. But in general, the idea is that ketones provide energy for the brain during exercise, and that brain fatigue is actually the trigger for systemic fatigue.
I agree with that.
Right.
That counterpoint. I mean, like your brain shuts down long before your body shuts down.
Absolutely. So there's an idea, and there was a study that was done last year, or earlier this year, I want to say, where they had some endurance athletes running 5Ks, so moderate to high intensity effort. They gave a minimal amount. Half of the cohort was keto adapted, fat adapted. Half of the cohort was carb fueled. They gave each of them, I think it was like 2 grams of glucose intra workout. And both groups had the exact same of performance enhancement. And the idea that the thing they were trying to show was that it's not about muscle glycogen, it's about blood glucose. If you can maintain energy in the blood, then you can maintain performance, because it's about what can the blood get to the brain. Mm-hmm. So, and it's not about what's in your muscles, because you're never going to run out of what's in your muscles. It's just not going to happen. So the idea, and this is what I'm hoping the next version of that same study is doing the same thing, but doing it with ketones and seeing if ketones have the same effect. If they do, because theoretically they should, then we have something that says, hey, yeah, ketones actually help brain energy and fight brain fatigue. And if you can fight brain fatigue, then you can perform for longer.
Yeah, honestly, haven't dove super deep. Like I've played around with the exogenous ketone esters and salts, but I can't pinpoint any notable improvement in performance with them.
Same here.
Yes, I mean, and like some people are of the opinion that like the benefit is with this dual fuel philosophy. Like you can have a carbohydrate dependent athlete using these and getting the best of both worlds, but I don't really fall into that camp at all. Some people think of them kind of like from a hormonal standpoint, like if you are kind of like testosterone, like if you're taking exogenous testosterone, your internal, endogenous testosterone is going to be downregulated. I don't think that's necessarily the case with regards to ketones, supplements, but I honestly haven't played around with enough to have a stance one way or the other.
Yeah, same here. I've got some that I've been trying. I've been playing around with a couple of different things. I haven't noticed anything performance-wise, cognitive-wise, any of that. People say they get a rush, all these different things. I haven't noticed anything. Now, again, maybe it's because I've been adapted for 8 years.
I think that has something to do with it. Like there's the
7 years,
ketone
right?
alcohols, which are tasty. Like I like them, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel a buzz from them at all. Like some people swear they do, but I can slam 6 of those back.
It could just be us throwing water in the ocean, right? I mean, we're already fat adapted. We're already there. What's the point of adding more?
That could be it.
That's kind of what I'm thinking is for someone who's not there yet, it's a change. I do know that there are protocols out there for people that are transitioning. And I do recommend that if you're transitioning from standard American or some other diet to a ketogenic diet or trying to become fat adapted, that ketones can play a role in helping the transition, right? Taking exogenous ketones help your body recognize in the system. There's the process of ketolysis, which is the process of how our body breaks ketones down and makes energy and does stuff with ketones. The more we can stimulate that process and make that process efficient, then the better we'll be when ketones are introduced into our body. So the sooner we can get them in, if you can start taking ketones at the beginning of your adaptation, then when your body is good at breaking its own fat down and creating its own ketones, you'll be ready to go and be better at using them instead of extending that process. So I always recommend taking ketones at the beginning.
And I think a lot of people experience a benefit from like the ketone salts simply because they're bound to a sodium or potassium and they need more of that anyways.
And they need that anyways. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. So I think there was one other thing I had on here. I think we talked about everything. Oh, you ready for this one? There's 2 more actually.
Yeah. Lay it on me, man. I didn't realize how late it was. I got a call in 15 minutes, but lay it on me.
Oh, no. Okay. Did you know that insulin is not actually anabolic?
I've heard multiple studies on this. It's oftentimes referred to as an extreme growth agent.
It is.
But it's not specific to any, standalone isolated tissue. So like anything could grow in the context of excess insulin. Yes.
What I found though, is I found a bunch of studies, I think 5, 6 or 7. I have to look at my thing. I've got them all written down. There's a handful of studies that I found that all of them basically say we can't find any proof that increasing insulin in your system increases muscle protein synthesis. That all of the data that we have on muscle protein synthesis with insulin is most likely a result of increased amino acid availability, not the presence of insulin.
They wouldn't have controlled for that?
They did in most of them. And that's what I'm saying. Most of the data shows that it was just because there were more amino acids, not because there was more insulin.
Interesting.
So it kind of made me think like, okay, that's an interesting thing. I'm wondering what other things are there. So then I look at ketones. Ketones are the exact opposite. They actually have some very specific interactions with enzymes and transporters in the body that increase muscle protein synthesis activity, which I thought was fascinating because I'd never heard that before. So in effect, and this is again, very specific in the detail, insulin does not have an anabolic function or mechanism specifically for muscle protein synthesis. Ketones do.
Specific for muscle protein synthesis.
Specific for muscle protein synthesis. I just thought that was fascinating. That's just a point that I wanted to bring out because it's something it shocked me. Like I was writing this article on my blog and it's like, I had to look at this like 8 times. Like, wait a second, what? Hold on a second.
I mean, that's oftentimes like the thing people point to as why they justify consuming carbohydrates.
Correct. And that's why I was doing the article because I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, man, when I was first getting into bodybuilding, I remember taking like pixie sticks
Yep.
to the gym to slam a pixie stick immediately post-workout to spike insulin and take advantage of that anabolic growth window.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really because it's more about the amino acids.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about it. And that I'll shoot you the link, or if you want, I can send you the link I wrote an article on the blog.
For sure. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it was very, very fascinating. A lot of studies out there that are talking about, hey, wait a second, maybe it's not the insulin. And then the last thing we'll talk about real quick is ketones actually don't provide energy for muscle. When you're first transitioning to a fat adaptation or keto diet, ketones can play a role in muscle contraction and helping you exercise. But very quickly into your adaptation, that stops. And ketones, maybe up to 5% of muscle contraction, they provide energy, but not a lot. Most of that, when you get adapted, transfers to your brain, and your brain takes up those ketones. And most of your ketones in your body are being utilized by your brain, and that's where most of it goes. So ketones are not helping you exercise from a physiological perspective and helping your muscles work better. Ketones are helping you exercise and do fitness activities by keep giving your brain energy, and that's where that benefit comes from.
On that note, what does the study show in regards to anti-inflammatory nature of ketones? Because it's
all over the place. Yeah, all over the place. Antioxidant properties like crazy. Yeah.
So they may not be inherently improving muscle contraction acutely, but if you're able to recover and train more frequently,
correct,
you're going to see a benefit in training.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah, systemic anti-inflammatory properties. Ketones are great for all of that stuff.
I like it.
And fat in general, right? And then if you top that off with the fact that fat is processed and utilized for energy with less oxidative stress than glucose and glycogen are, then it's a win-win.
Yeah, I'm super intrigued by the long-term effect of all it. And it's interesting because, I mean, you've been in the space for a while too. You and I both have. It's like time's going to be the great equalizer for all things.
Yeah.
And I'm just excited to keep preaching the same message I have been.
Same here.
For the next 50 years, man. And I'm just going to look around, look at all my peers and see what everybody's doing. Because everybody's trying to jump ship, do the next big hot thing. You got the sugar dieters doing their thing. It's like
we don't have time for that
thing. It's like, man, I've been speaking the same message. I've been learning a lot and I've refined, polished things. But I mean, if you go back to my content from 2017, man, it's the same stuff.
Same stuff. I love it. Right. That's the same here. Yeah. Same here. I think my first video on YouTube 6 years ago was all about needing more protein, and you can't overeat protein. Right. Yeah. It's like that still works.
We should do a podcast on protein sometime.
Oh my God. Let's do it. Yeah, for sure.
Let's do a conversation on protein. We should schedule this for 3 hours long, man. I could keep talking to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we haven't even talked. I need to sit down with you and do an interview for my next book. So we need to schedule that.
Where are you located now?
East Coast.
East Coast. I need to just get you here to the studio. We'll do a workout. We'll go for a run.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Throw some steaks. I'm doing a lot more in-person recordings.
Okay.
So we'll just have you here. We'll just do the whole kit and caboodle, man.
Rock it. Just let me know what works for you. We'll do it for sure.
Awesome,
we'll bring that down too.
Yeah, 100%. Until then, where do people go to find out more about you?
CoachBronson.com is my website. My YouTube channel is coach.bronson. My Instagram is coach.bronson. And you can find all my books on Amazon.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm excited for the new book. Congrats. I mean, writing a book's no simple feat, so you're killing it, brother. Proud of you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Till next time, man. Take care.